How exactly did sin enter the world? Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask and Response with R.A. Sweeney, where I try to at least give a helpful response, if maybe not a complete answer to some of the questions you all are asking. Today, I wanted to respond to a question that a friend of mine on Substack kind of just put out to the community. I think she had said it was her daughter or her son, a young kid had asked her a question. They were working through Romans chapter 5, and in verse 12, it says that sin entered the world and death entered the world through one man. And her kid stopped and was like, "Well, I thought Eve ate from the tree, not Adam. And so how does that all work?" And she was kind of flabbergasted, like, "Well, that's a really great question." And then was just kind of asking how people are handling that. And it is a great question because, it doesn't make a whole lot of narrative sense to take all of that exactly literally. So I wanted to just dive into the question a little bit. And I don't have a great answer on how to reconcile all these passages, but just some thoughts to maybe help understand what exactly it is that we're dealing with. So in Romans chapter 5, verse 12, specifically, it says that that one man sinned and that brought death into the world, and then death spread through everyone because everybody had sinned. And so nowhere in there does it say Adam specifically. And so I feel like that is important. If you go down another verse or two, it does say Adam. And so it seems like it's probably referring to Adam, but it doesn't necessarily. So one way that I could understand that is it doesn't say one man in the way that, it's not a gender specific term. It's one human. And so we could say, okay, well, this is talking about Eve. And that would certainly line up with, I think it's 1 Timothy 2, where Paul is talking about women, that he doesn't typically rely on women as preachers because he specifically says it was Eve and not Adam that was deceived. And so you could maybe look at it that way and say, okay, well, by one human, he means Eve. And even the name Adam means human or humanity in Hebrew. And so in a couple verses, when it does bring up Adam, you could maybe try to argue that even there where it uses just a transliteration of the word Adam, so it's, Adam spelled in Greek letters. So it's the Hebrew word in Greek letters. You could maybe try to argue that, okay, he's just talking about a human. I don't find that real compelling. It doesn't seem to work too well for me, but, it's a possible explanation. Another thing that occurs to me is sin doesn't get mentioned in the story of Adam and Eve. Sin gets mentioned in the story of Cain and Abel. And death is mentioned in the story of Adam and Eve, but you don't see them die in that story. In fact, they actually they go on past the Cain and Abel story. And because then you get their son Shet, who is born at the end of chapter 4. And so maybe it's referring to Cain being the one man, and it's not even referring to Adam and Eve at all. Again, I've got a lot of trouble really buying that, but if I want to look at like where exactly did one man succumb to sin, the first time those words are used is in chapter 4 of Genesis with Cain. So sin is introduced to Cain as something he's supposed to master, and he's devoured by sin when he murders his brother. And so that's where the first death actually occurs in the story. So maybe you could go that way with it. And again, I'm not going to say that I don't buy that, but I've got some hangups with that option as well. So different ways we can look at that. one of the people that I saw that was actually responding to this question that she had raised, he kind of brought up the idea of there was probably some time that passed before they actually ate the fruit. In the way that a lot of our sins that we fall into we don't just like dive headfirst into it. We maybe get a little bit closer than we should, and then it kind of normalizes us to it. And over time we become desensitized, and eventually we end up by the tree. And so he kind of framed it with the understanding of like, Adam and Eve probably were hanging out by that tree a lot, inching closer and closer over time. And that's really where Adam's sin was. Which that's a potential argument as well. Really where I go with it is when I look at the story of Adam and Eve. It does say that when they eat from the fruit of that tree, that's when death is going to be a problem. And so I feel like that really seems to be what Paul's getting at here in Romans. And then he mentions Adam in just another verse or two. And so I really think he's trying to say like Adam is the one who sinned here. I don't think you can pass that off on Cain or Eve in this scenario. But what I look at is when they do eat from the fruit, they don't die right then and there. They hide. And God comes and he looks for them and he tries to find them. And so when we look at like, what did Adam do before Eve did? And it's lying and hiding and trying to justify himself. So Eve did eat the fruit first, but the thing that Adam did first was respond to God. God says to Adam, like, hey, what's the deal here? Why are you hiding and all of these things? And he's like, oh, well, the woman, she tricked me. So he's blame shifting to her. And, you gave me that woman, God. So that wasn't really cool of you. Maybe you should have made a better woman for me. And so he is trying to make himself the good guy in this scenario, and he actually makes God the bad guy in this scenario. And I've talked about in several places, like when you think of like a parent and child relationship, like I'm a dad and there's nothing my kids can do that I'm not going to forgive them for. Like they're my kids. Like, of course I'm going to forgive them. They could do literally anything and I'm still going to love those kids. And even as they get older, I don't see that changing. But the one thing that I can't forgive is when they push me away, when they want to lie to me, when they want to build that distance. Not that I wouldn't forgive it, but how can I? How can I still have a relationship with them when they won't let me by pushing me away? When they're putting up barriers between us, there's no ability for forgiveness to happen, for reconciliation to happen, because they're not allowing that to happen. And so to me, I've really harnessed in on that idea of, yes, they disobeyed by eating the fruit, but that wasn't the big problem. God doesn't start pronouncing consequences when they eat from the fruit. He says, like, hey, let's fix this. Let's talk through and try to fix the problem. And they don't allow that reconciliation to happen. And Adam did that. They cut themselves off by not allowing the healing to take place. And so I think that's kind of what we're supposed to be focusing on is Adam, first and foremost, pushed God away, rejected God. And that's really the nature of sin is, in Hebrew and Greek, sin means to miss the mark or fail to be what it's supposed to be. And if Jesus is what we're supposed to be, then sin is failing to be like Jesus. And the one thing Jesus was all about was clinging to God, abiding in God, unity with God. It's that relational dynamic. He was, fully in that relationship with God no matter what. He was always going to stick to that relationship. And so I really think that's at its core, the definition of sin more than anything is pushing God away and refusing to have that relationship with him. And we see Adam is the first one to do that. And in that passage from 1 Timothy where it says that Eve was the first one to sin. It doesn't actually say she was the first one to sin. It says she was deceived and Adam wasn't, which I have a little bit of a hard time with. I don't get what Paul means by that because Adam ate the fruit too. So is he saying that it's better that Adam did it with eyes wide open? or what exactly he's saying there, but it doesn't say that Eve sinned first. It says she was the one that was deceived. And so I think when we look at, like, yes, Eve was tricked into doing something she wasn't supposed to, into disobeying, yes, but Adam was the one who wouldn't allow that relationship to heal. He wouldn't repent. He wouldn't try to be reconciled. He wouldn't cling to God. And I think that's where we start to see the essence of sin, is in that forcing division, or not allowing for the healing of those rifts that do form. And so I think that's kind of what's going on here. Lots of different ways you can take it. So I've presented several different ways. One that I forgot to mention was just when the two became one flesh, they're one human being. They are now one being. And so I forget the term for it, but there's a poetic device that you use, like a part of something to describe the whole. Yeah, and so you could be using Adam to describe that marriage unit, which I do think fits pretty well as well, but I kind of lean more towards that, Eve did something wrong, but it really escalated to that critical level with what Adam did by preventing healing, by not repenting, by pushing away. So a few different ways you could take it, and you're welcome to take it any of those ways, or honestly, there's probably other ways, but those are at least the big ways that I've seen that explained, kind of where I lean in that, and I could be wrong. I might change my mind tomorrow too, because there's a lot of compelling things and a few different arguments there, but at least right now, that's kind of how I'm sitting with these passages and how they could all kind of work together. So that's what I have for this one. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure that you're subscribing so that you get the weekly videos of me answering questions. Be liking them so that other people can find these videos a little bit easier. If you know other people who might enjoy these, be sharing them as well. And then, like I mentioned last week, I'm getting ready to bring in some new content, so I'll probably be either moving this to Wednesdays when I do my typical wordplay videos, or moving the wordplay videos to Fridays when I do these videos, and I'll do one or the other between the ask and response or the wordplay videos each week, so that I can bring that in, and that should be happening within the next few weeks. I still don't quite have exactly when I'm going to start that new project, but hopefully here soon we'll be doing that, and so expect these will be probably about every other week, but it'll just be this or wordplay each week. But for now, I really appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you joining me in these videos. If you have questions that you want to ask, feel free to put them in the comments, email, whatever works. But thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.